Even though it's been a while since The Office has ended, it's still one of the most popular TV shows out there, amassing a massive fan base. The actors are still relevant as their characters, people still talk about the show, it still gets referenced. It's just a cult classic. Not even a cult classic, it really is just considered a classic. So, in honor of that, I'm going to be ranking all The Office characters from worst to best in tier list fashion. Just a heads up that I know there's going to be lots of disagreements. People are not going to like my hot takes, but if you don't like it, please tell me in the comments. They're completely open. I love hearing all the different opinions. I love hearing what people think about the different characters. Agree or disagree, just let me know below. I love having an open discussion down there and seeing everybody be passionate about shows and stuff like that. And if you like this content, please be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with the latest tier list, videos, reviews, all that good stuff. Alright, so in typical tier list fashion, it's S to F. So if I put a character up in the S tier, it means they're superior, they're amazing, best of the best characters. And if I put them in the F tier, well, you know what that means. They're bad, the character is bad. I'm going to be ranking these off of 3 things that I will personally be using. So 1, how good the character is, the character arc, stuff like that. 2nd, how likable they are. Do I like them personally as a character? And 3rd, how well the actor is at the character. So again, how good they're in the actual role. So without further ado, let's get right into this. Alright, so first up, I'm starting with Oscar Martinez, played by Oscar Nunez. So as one of the few sane people in the office, Oscar's main job is to really set up other people around him for humorous moments. He himself is humorous at times, but he really is one of those people in the office that is more sane and just wondering what is happening around him, all the crazy things that are happening. He seems to be the voice of reason in some of the cases. Sometimes he is one of those very people that I'm talking about, but most of the time he is definitely one of the voices of reason, and he just seems like a pretty good character overall. I think that Oscar Nunez does a good job of playing him, and you know, it'd be easy to get along with him if you were actually in the office with him. And, you know, just a solid character. You know, straight down the middle, I think that I'm going to be putting Oscar at the B tier. Next, we have David Wallace, played by Andy Buckley. So he is one of the corporate people in the office. He's really above Michael Scott and everybody that comes after him. And he's really in charge of everything that's going on. Doesn't have much of a role, but I think that Andy Buckley did a very good job at playing that sort of corporate, very uptight with the rules boss, if you will, to Michael Scott specifically. And there's a lot of funny moments where he's really trying to tell Michael Scott what he can or cannot do as his superior. And he really is nice with him overall and very patient with someone that's so out of the box as Michael Scott. And I think that Andy Buckley does a really good job with that. Later on in the seasons, I think he has sort of a midlife crisis going on. And, you know, they kind of touch on that a little bit, but he's a pretty solid character. I think that he really just holds it down as that straight-laced corporate sort of guy. So because of that, I'm going to be putting him next to Oscar here at the B- tier, somewhere around there. Next we have Gabe Lewis, played by Zach Woods. So he appears later on in the series. I believe somewhere between season 3 or 4, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong about that, but he's one of the newer people that kind of come on board. As an actor, I think that Zach Woods, from what I've seen, very good at improvising, very funny in certain roles. In this one in particular, I found it to be a little annoying. He doesn't really have too much screen time, and he sort of is a punching bag in a way for certain people. But honestly, I didn't think that he was all that crazy in the show, to be honest. Not too memorable for me personally. I might have to go back and watch a little bit more about it again and maybe rewatch the series, and then my mind might change on it. But as it stands, I think that Gabe Lewis as a character just leaves a lot to be desired. I feel like that one might have some controversy around it, but something tells me it's going to be the other characters on this list that are really going to get me in hot waters. But I think that Gabe Lewis is just, he's meh. C- tier. Next we have Jim Halpert, played by John Krasinski. He's definitely one of the staples of the show. He's there from the beginning all the way to the very end. He's one of the trademark characters of the show, one of the main characters, if you will. And he definitely is a very solid character. I think that he's one of the more human characters on the show. He's very much the voice of reason in a lot of moments. He is intelligent, he's well liked by his colleagues, and he's well liked by the audience overall. I don't think that there's a lot of people that don't like Jim to some degree. I think that he ultimately is a good guy at the end of the day. I think he really does show acts of kindness, and he has a heart throughout the show. He does have a few moments in there where I do find him a little annoying or a little obnoxious in a way. That might be because people around him are so dumb, and he ends up getting a lot more credit than he deserves in those moments. But that might be nitpicking overall. I do think that he's a very solid character, though, and well acted by John Krasinski. I think he really did nail this good balance between this mundane office worker along with a friend and partner, if you will, later on, with Pam, while still having this character or wanting to do more and stuff. So there's a lot of relatable traits that Jim Halpert has, and some good comedic moments when he's looking at the camera and with his sort of blank expression, you know what I'm talking about, just like this are you seeing what I'm seeing kind of look to the camera, which has definitely been something that a lot of people have referenced. But it's a solid character, very good. So I'm going to be putting him up at the A tier. I think that's where I'd put him. Next we have Kevin Malone, played by Brian Baumgartner. I don't know if I said that correctly, but Kevin is a dunce. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I think that Kevin is just, there's not a lot going on up there, if you know what I mean. But the thing is, there's been all these conspiracies where he's actually extremely smart, but he plays it up like he's dumb. Everything that he does in the show leads me to believe he just really is an idiot. But it is funny that they do have him working with numbers and working in an office setting, doing what I would imagine would be something important in the actual office of Dunder Mifflin. So that aspect of it is funny. It adds more to the character. I think that alone is hilarious. But he does have some iconic moments, like dropping the chili and just a lot of different little mini memorable things about him that make Kevin kind of funny. Personally, not really my brand of comedy. I don't particularly find Kevin to be super funny, if you will. It doesn't really do it for me personally. I know a lot of people do find him humorous, but just that brand of comedy where it's just very like deadpan, but he's like a dunce. Yes, it makes for some funny moments, but personally, not super big of a fan of it. But, I mean, not the worst character at all. So, again, I'm going to be putting Kevin Malone at the C+ tier, bordering on a B. So, somewhere between there. Somewhere between a B- and a C+. Next, we have Jo Bennet, played by Kathy Bates. Now, she is a firecracker of a character, honestly. She appears later on, and she is just this country southern sort of boss that comes and takes over, I believe. Or she's one of the stakeholders, one of the two. But she is totally this explosive southern character, and I think Kathy Bates is a great actress, honestly. She's excellent. And in the show, she does bring that same level of charisma mixed with this sort of psychotic sort of energy to her as well. Like, there's something off about her as well, but she also has that charm, southern charm to her as well. So, I mean, I don't know what to think about this character, honestly. It's somewhere in the middle. I do think that it's played very well, and there's a lot of moments of conflict that are surrounding her later on, especially. But honestly, it's not super memorable, if you will. As time goes on, I think Kathy Bates' character doesn't really stand the test of time too well versus other characters or other guest appearances. And because of that, I think the performance is very well, but I think that Jo Bennet is going in the C+ tier. I think she belongs somewhere there. And I could make an argument for B- more than someone like Kevin, but I'm just going to be putting her up at C+. Next, we have Phyllis Lapin-Vance, played by Phyllis Smith. So Phyllis is that sort of older, generous, very nice nice-mannered office worker, that coworker that's just very kind, and she's older, and she has her life, she's gone through it, she's seen experiences, and she's just a sweetheart on the surface. Though the thing is, though, there are several moments in this where she does have sass. She does show that sort of blunt nature that some people that are older show. So she's not to be messed with, she definitely has those moments in there. She's not all sunshine and rainbows. But ultimately she does bring this sort of innocence as well, like this sort of like you can't help but kind of like her as well throughout the show. And she's sort of like this, again, someone that is like a staple to the show overall, and she would be a staple of a team, real life office team as well. And I'm sure, we've all had coworkers like this, or someone who is easy to go along with, might give you good advice and stuff. But Phyllis, I think she does have this sort of underrated form of comedic timing as well. I think some of her stuff are pretty funny, some not so much. For me, got a few chuckles maybe throughout the whole show, but mainly because of the circumstances, not so much because she herself was a funny character, if you will. But overall, I think she's a likable character, and almost put her at the C tier, but I think I'm going to be putting Phyllis at the B- tier. Next, we have Nellie, played by Catherine Tate. Now, this character in particular is really not liked by the community or the fans in general, so I've heard. And I'd have to agree, honestly. I think bringing this sort of, and nothing against Catherine Tate as an actress, as a British classic actress, right? She just, I don't know, it's more the character is just very annoying, honestly. Really isn't too funny. It seemed very forced, and it really didn't help that she really comes into play shortly after Michael Scott leaves, and it's almost like she has shoes to fill. And this goes for a lot of the people that they brought in after, but there's these shoes to fill, and she's just not it, honestly. Just very bossy, very annoying, not a likable character. If I had to say anything, not very funny either. In a comedy show, you need to be funny, and not really super funny. It definitely had to do with the writing, but yeah, it just doesn't even touch the other people that were in the show that could have been better in that spot. And I could definitely see why people didn't like this particular character, and I don't either. So I think, nothing against Catherine Tate, but I'm sorry, Nellie goes to the D tier. Next, we have Michael Scott, played by Steve Carell. You might know this character, maybe not. Of course, this is the central character, one of the most iconic characters in the entire show, let alone TV history in general. Michael Scott is the epitome of just hilarity, but a heart of gold, stupidity, but also intelligent, a great salesman, but also an idiot. Just a contradiction of a human, but in the best ways possible. I think that Michael Scott made me laugh more than pretty much any other character in the whole show. There's a couple that come close, but his just comedic timing, his comedic facial expressions, his voices, everything that Steve Carell does as this character is perfect, honestly. It's so out there, it's right there in the same sort of vein as Ricky Gervais's classic portrayal of his version of The Office, the classic, the original one. Ricky Gervais had that same sort of out there, inappropriate, awkward style, and Steve Carell just makes that his own as this character. And there's so many hilarious moments, and just the way that everybody sort of looks down on him or is fed up with him, and he's just a firecracker of a character. So much energy involved in it, so many emotions. But throughout the show, you see glimpses of brilliance, and that's what makes the character so good, is that even through all these stupid moments, and through all these moments that just would have you rolling your eyes, or like wanting to talk to HR because he's making inappropriate jokes, all that is always ended off with something from the heart. He like has a heart of gold at the end of it. Like, he cares at the end of the day. And that's why his goodbye is so heartfelt, because even after all that, even as annoying as they found him, he is a great boss, though, at the end of the day. In his own kind of unorthodox way, Michael Scott is that guy, that boss, that makes a lasting impression on you, and it makes it unforgettable. But again, one of the most iconic characters in TV history, I think, in comedy history at least, comedy shows and stuff like that, and just really made the show. Without Steve Carell as Michael Scott, this show would not have been the same, and just brilliant performance. So Michael Scott, 100% S tier, easy, no question. Next we have Charles, Idris Elba's character. He is sort of the stand-in for a little while Steve Carell. I think, I don't remember exactly the situation, but Steve Carell kind of stepped away from being the boss for a little bit, and Idris Elba's character, Charles, kind of comes in and takes that over. So Idris Elba definitely has a great charm to him. I think that he plays this character pretty well, and he's sort of like this no funny business sort of boss, completely different from Michael Scott, and just lays down the law. Really is a bit of an a-hole, honestly, in some of the situations, some of the times that he's there and interacting with the people under him. Bit of an a-hole, honestly, but he does bring a good like charisma and charm to the character. Honestly, not there for very long, and he does a pretty good job though. I do kind of like the character in the sense how he interacts with the other characters and tries to keep them in line, you know, like Dwight, Jim, and other people. And it does create this sort of tension that I did like in the show, you know, between some of the characters and him kind of not letting certain things pass as Michael did. And also, not only does it act to sort of exemplify more of what makes Michael Scott so good, but also makes other people kind of miss him and then like have this cool dynamic. So ultimately, I think the character is pretty good, even though he doesn't have a big role. So I think I'm gonna just be putting him up at the B- tier, somewhere around there. I think he's pretty solid. Next we have Clark, played by Clark Duke. Now, this guy doesn't really show up very much. He's just in a couple of episodes, not much screen time. He's just somebody who works there, I believe. I don't think there's any kind of reason to have him there. He has some kind of weird interactions with some of the characters. I just found him kind of annoying. He has that sort of like punchable personality. Not the actor, but like the actual character. Just a bit of a punchable personality, if that makes sense. I didn't care for this character very much. I'm just gonna cut to the chase. Not super memorable, not really that funny. D tier. Clark goes to the D tier. Alright, next we have Mose, played by Michael Schur, which is the brother of Dwight Schrute, and has a couple of interactions with him. Definitely mainly to be that sort of crazy brother of his, and you know how crazy Dwight is. So, I mean, honestly, doesn't really have that much going for him. I was going to get to this later on, but Dwight Schrute and the Schrute kind of family, not really my cup of tea when it comes to comedy. So, you know, Moses is kind of the same thing, and he's sort of like the minion to Dwight. You know, his antics, he's involved in some of the antics, and he doesn't really say too much in it. Doesn't have much screen time, doesn't have much dialogue in general, from what I remember. And yeah, I mean, you know, he's doesn't add much, honestly, and a little bit forgettable as well. So for me, could really take him or leave him. I don't hate the character like I do these two. C-, bordering, like really right on the edge of the D tier, honestly. Alright, moving on, we have Hank, the security guard, played by Hugh Dane. Now, I kind of like this guy. He doesn't have too much screen time either, but he is definitely one of those people that really complimented some of the characters like Dwight, like Michael Schrute, like Michael Scott, like Dwight Schrute, like Jim, and some other people. He's sort of this no-nonsense, older, almost Stanley-like security guard, where he's like, I'm doing the minimum work here because these people are jokes. They're absolute jokes, and it's just funny. Doesn't have a lot of role, but I think that the actor did a great job at sort of playing this annoyed, but also, you know what, willing to help out security guard throughout the show. And I think that his comedic timing and acting chops are pretty good for the show, honestly. So, doesn't have much of a role, but also does some pretty good comedy work as well throughout it. So, he has more of a lasting impression than someone like Mose as well. So, I don't know, I like Hank. I think he's kind of cool. I'm going to be putting him up at the B- tier. Alright, next up we have Todd Packer, played by David Kushner. This guy is absolutely hilarious. He had me cracking up throughout the whole show. He is a firecracker of a character, so unbelievably inappropriate. He would have been fired within a week of any corporate office, but he is so funny. Completely just out-of-pocket statements. I believe he works in the same area, if not something close to Dunder Mifflin or something like that. He definitely has like connections with Michael Scott. He's always referencing and talking to him, and they're like buddies. But he's crazy. I love these characters that come in, and he has a lot of comedy roles that he's been in. I'm sure you've seen him around. He's always kind of that southern country sort of guy sometimes, but he's always like, he can be kind of annoying in those sometimes, but in this show it works out so perfectly in the office setting. Just the things that he's saying, so inappropriate but so hilarious. It's so freaking hilarious. He was cracking me up. I gotta put him up at the A tier. Definitely, he's up there for me. Next we have Stanley Hudson, played by Leslie David Baker. Classic character, Stanley. He is funny as well. This guy knows how to have that good duality of just really not caring and putting in the bare minimum. He's that guy in the office that I'm here to collect my paycheck and nothing else. He wants nothing to do with anybody else in the office. He's here to clock in, work, and get out. And I think he's the only character like that in the office. And just the absolute blasé attitude that he has throughout the show makes for some hilarious moments. And I think that Leslie Baker does such a great job at playing this character. And it's classic. That's why he's one of the most classic characters. Some of the moments he has are so funny. And what's great about having characters like this, that when they do not care at all and they're very like monotone, like yeah, whatever, like a grouch, kind of like basically sleeping half the time, like whatever. Having those kind of characters is so good, because when you match them up with these really energetic, crazy, over-the-top characters, it's always funny, the dynamic. And there's literally episodes where they see how far they can get away with certain things that he wouldn't notice because he doesn't care and he doesn't notice anything. He's just, work, okay, goodbye. And having that duality with someone like Michael Scott is funny. There are some moments where he's a bit of an a-hole later on to Michael Scott. You know, like he says certain things, and he's, you know, I like, he would get on my nerves later on, in shows. Or if I was in the office with him, he'd probably get on my nerve, because you want somebody that actually cares, and somebody who just doesn't care at all can be pretty obnoxious. But for show's sake, though, I think that he's really funny and just a classic character, one of the more memorable ones. Stanley goes to a very low, but nonetheless S tier. Alright, next we have Holly, played by Amy Ryan. So Holly is the counterpart to Michael Scott, basically. They end up getting together at the end, but I kind of like that they were able to bring in somebody that meshed and matched the energy of Michael Scott, especially when he's trying to find a lover, if you will, you know, throughout the series, and he has stuff on and off with Jan, and he tries, and you know, you're rooting for Michael Scott, you want him to find the one, you know. And then when Holly comes along, it's nice to see that. I think that they have good chemistry, and Holly's basically like the female version of Michael Scott. And because of that, it's like you see them, sparks fly between them. And that's kind of nice, because you're always rooting for Michael Scott. And she herself is crazy and weird in that same sort of way that he is. So I kind of like that, the energy that she brought in as well. And she also gave off that sort of like, I'm also here to work also kind of vibe, which was good. It was a good duality. So honestly, I do like Holly as a character. I think that she was very good as a counterpart to Michael Scott later on in the series. I think she's there for like 1 season and a half maybe, but she's a good character. I like her. I'll be putting her up at the B tier. Next we have another staple character, Pam Beasily, played by Jenna Fisher. So she is one of the classic day one characters, and she's there throughout the whole series. And personally, I think she's one of the most grounded characters on the entire show. I think that she is a great character that exemplifies not only the mundane, you know, in a human element, the mundaneness of working a office job, but also mixing in her own personal struggles and passions and personality as well to it. I think that she just is a very strong-willed person in the show, and I think Jenna Fisher plays her very well with a good mix of sort of awkward but also means well and funny at the same time, with a funny sense of humor. But someone who also struggles with her own stuff in her own life too. And it's really nice to see the connection and chemistry that both her and Jim Halpert have, and they eventually end up obviously getting married and stuff. But it's seeing that sort of chemistry and that sort of flirtatious sort of energy that they both have. It's a testament to both their acting, but it just felt very real. And I don't know, I just really like her character throughout. I think she evolves a lot. I think that she really is one of those people that throughout it all, though, she, as much as she did hate Michael Scott at times and you know, find him more annoying, not hate him, but find him more annoying, I think that she was the one that was always had a close connection with him. And you see it throughout the show. You see how much it meant to her that he came. He was the only one, Michael Scott was the only one who went to his art show. And then funny enough, she's the only one who goes all the way to the airport to tell him goodbye. I like that kind of extra touch. But, you know, going back to her, I think she just has that good, grounded human energy to her in the show. And it's just very realistic, but very likable. She's a very likable character. So I think Pam's a great staple character. I'm going to be putting her up next to Stanley at the S tier. Next up, we have Daryl Philbin, played by Craig Robinson. He's one of the warehouse guys underneath. He's okay. You know, I don't know. Again, his kind of brand of comedy doesn't really do it for me that much. I think he's okay. Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say about this character. I know he has a little bit of development throughout, and he shows up throughout the whole series. And Craig Robinson does have his sort of brand of comedy, and it's funny at times. But for this show, it's just not super memorable. I didn't think his character was all that. But at the same time, though, I don't really hate the character by any means. It's just kind of right somewhere in the middle. So C is where he'll be going. Next, we have Roy, played by David Denman. He barely shows up. He's Pam's boyfriend at the beginning, and then they you know, obviously split up. He's a big douchebag throughout the show, honestly, and that's his character. And I think that David Denman does a good job at playing that sort of role, so testament to his acting. Not very likable at all, and really just a one-note character. Not much going for him. Barely shows up, is there to just kind of be a conflict point. But again, yeah, just not a central character at all, and a little just bland. Like, you know, this is the type of guy that's like in the office just talking about whatever, like football, like, you know, it's just like, yeah, I don't know. I put him down at D. He's just not much going on for that character. Next, we have Dwight Schrute, played by Rainn Wilson. Now, Dwight is a quintessential piece of the Office puzzle. Dwight Schrute is one of the most memorable characters in the entire show. He plays a integral part of the workings of the show, and some of the craziest moments come from him. He is iconic in his own right. I think Rainn Wilson does an excellent job portraying this super unique character, one that I really haven't seen anything like this character before, and because of that, he's definitely one of the ones that everybody knows. Everybody knows the name Dwight Schrute, and that's because of the character itself. And he is very much almost a military level of just straight pinned, but at the same time this level of insanity that he has throughout the show. The antics that he does are so out there and crazy, and you know, arguably you could say all the moments he has with Jim and him trolling him and stuff like that, it's definitely pretty funny, and definitely some iconic moments there. Personally, like I said, Dwight Schrute's level of comedy, that kind of brand of comedy, doesn't really make me laugh, but it does entertain me. And I think that when they more explore Dwight's more serious side and more of his human side, he's a very good character. I do like that aspect of it. But when it comes to some of his crazy antics, I didn't really laugh that much at them, honestly. I laughed more at their reactions than the other characters. But him himself, I mean, you know, he's just such an out there character, and I've known people like that, and they're just very unique in their own way, to say the least. But without question, though, Dwight Schrute is one of the fundamental parts of the show. Rainn Wilson, again, knocks it out of the park. I can't justify an S tier, but I will definitely be putting Dwight Schrute up at the A tier. Alright, next we have Angela Martin, played by Angela Kinsley. Now, Angela Kinsley, or rather Angela Martin, she ends up obviously getting with Dwight later on, but how is she as a character herself? She is just miserable, honestly. She seems miserable, never smiles, never smiling, straight face, just frowning half the time, a cat mom basically, very neurotic in her own way, very, boring, if you will, in a way. Like, her character doesn't have much personality. If she was a color, she'd be like gray or something. Just like very not much going on with her personality. But that's what also is humorous, because again, she's around all these colorful, like she's sitting at a cubicle with Oscar and Kevin. You know what I mean? And then you have her right there in the middle, and she's just like completely deadpan, just monotone almost in her own way. And it's funny to see that she ends up actually getting with Dwight later on. They end up having like a wedding or whatnot. It's quite wild, actually, how their story kind of unfolds. And I kind of like that, because you would never expect that, honestly. You would never expect her character to do that. But I think that she plays it pretty well. I think that it does take a certain level of skill to actually be that kind of way in a convincing way. And she's like one of those people that just will give you a dirty look. You know what I mean? Like, she's just always in a constant state of RBF, just giving you this dirty look if you said something, or unimpressed. That's the best way to put it. But yeah, I mean, she's an interesting character overall, though. Not the funniest character either. Nothing crazy, but I think Angela's a solid B- tier. I think that she's pretty good, pretty essential. Next, we have Erin Hannon, played by Ellie Kemper. So she's like the opposite of Angela. She comes later on in the series, and she's just a ball of energy. She's always out there. She's always smiling, always super quirky. She's almost like, what's the best way to compare her? She's kind of almost like Michael Scott in a way, but toned down a lot, and not as like offensive, quote unquote, if you will. She's more just like a tamed version of him in a way that she's always making jokes. Very quirky, very bubbly character. It's kind of interesting to see her dynamic with some of the other characters. Doesn't play a huge role overall. I think it is nice that they added sort of like this really bubbly, like over the top loud kind of character to the show, because I feel like it's funny because she would probably make a better receptionist when she ends up taking over the receptionist spot in a way. But so that kind of makes sense. But yeah, I think that Ellie Kemper has a good sort of comedic vibe about her. I think that she has this sort of character to her that does match the show pretty well and does do a good job. So honestly, I did like the Erin character. I think that even though she isn't in there very long, I think she's pretty respectable. A little annoying at times, but anyone who's kind of like this is going to have their moments. So I'd put her at a low B tier, so like B- area. Next we have Mr. Vance, the husband of Phyllis. He basically has no role in the show other than to say, my name's J. Vance, and this is my company, Vance Refrigeration or something. That's his one and only job, basically. Doesn't add much, doesn't do much in there for like 2 episodes. Not much to say about him. I don't know, just for that reason. And he seems like he doesn't care about anything but his business kind of in the show. So I don't know, putting him at D tier, not much to say about him. Next we have Robert California, played by James Spader. Now, I think James Spader is an excellent actor. I think that he's very underrated in his own right. And in this show, I think his character is extremely underrated. He kind of comes in and takes over from Michael Scott, or from someone else, I think. But he comes in and he takes over the leadership role. And I don't know, I just think that he had a great sort of villain. He's great at playing like a villain. He was great at Ultron, but he plays this villainous almost boss in the show, and he has this eccentric sort of lifestyle, and he's very like poetic, and I thought it was pretty like entertaining to watch him sort of interact with some of the other characters, because he's just so out there, and I think that he played the role very well, And I think that he adds this extra energy that they hadn't tapped into, because the show really taps on all these different sort of personalities and archetype. But one of them they hadn't really covered was this sort of style, like this villainous, eccentric, so almost like high life sort of guy. And just seeing his dynamic and how intense he is, because that's the best way to describe him. He's just an intense character. Seeing that is pretty entertaining to me. So I think Robert California is pretty underrated. I'd put him up at the A tier. I think he's pretty solid. Next we have Karen Filipelli, played by Rashida Jones. Bit of a cardboard character, to be honest with you. She really doesn't play much of a role other than be a potential love interest for Jim Halpert in his short period of time where he's merged into another part of the company. And you know, I mean, she's not bad by any means. She's not a character that I particularly don't like, but at the same time, she's not, just very like somewhere in the middle. I don't know. She doesn't have like this huge personality. Rashida Jones acts good in it, don't get me wrong, but in terms of being funny, I wouldn't say that. Not very funny. Not a huge personality either. Just kind of put in there. But I don't know. I can't speak too much about it, honestly. I think that Karen goes somewhere in the C tier. I think that's fair. I don't hate her, but I don't think that she should be any higher than that. Next, we have Kelly Kapoor, played by Mindy Kaling. Now, this is where I'm going to lose some people. All right, this is the point of the video where I am going to start to get comments, if I haven't already started to get comments about some of the ratings. I don't like Kelly Kapoor. I don't like her character. I found her extremely annoying. She's an airhead, a dunce, extremely over dramatic, over emotional, etc., etc. Just an annoying character. I would hate to be around her in the office, just gossiping, very just like, I understand she's just an archetype through and through. She's that ditz that's all into pop culture, like a younger sort of generation, if you will. All about her looks, all about romance, all about that kind of thing. I just found her to be extremely annoying. Not funny or anything. I guess Mindy Kaling played her well. I don't know. The character's just so one note and one note in the way that it's just like emotional ditz. That's the one note that she has throughout the whole show. I don't know. She's just really annoying as a character. Not anything really, not really any redeeming traits. So I don't know. I'm putting her down at the F tier. Yep, our first F tier goes to Kelly Kapoor. But don't get too carried away here, because next we have Ryan Howard, played by BJ Novak. I also hate this character too. They go hand in hand here. He is, I don't know. I don't like him at all. I think there's not a single redeeming quality about him. Yes, he has like some moments where he like has his thing going on the side, like he's created a website. He's just not funny to me. He's not funny. He's kind of a D-bag throughout the whole show. You know, he's like I don't know. I don't like him. There's no redeeming qualities of it. He's not funny. I didn't find him funny at all. He's not likable. He's very one-note as well. I don't like him. Didn't like him. Talented writer. Hated the character. Hated him. F tier. I'm sorry, I gotta do it. Ryan goes in F tier too. Next we have Meridth. Another firecracker redhead, played by Katie Flannery. She is just this over-the-top, completely inappropriate in an office setting. And when I'm saying inappropriate, I mean like in an office setting. Someone just in her like early 40s, just having sort of midlife crisis all the time. Really out there. And because of that, I think there's some funny moments with her in them. I think that Meridth definitely has some iconic moments in there, but did I find it personally funny? Not really, no. No, I don't really find her that funny. But, you know, I gotta give her credit for the acting aspect of it. I think that Katie Flannery does put her best into it, but yeah, this character is just kind of like a meh for me. Nothing that crazy, and trying a little too hard as well, the way they wrote her in certain aspects. So for that, I'm just going to be putting her at the C- tier. I know some people aren't going to like that, but yeah, let me know below. Alright, next we have Creed Bratton, played by Creed Bratton. So he plays himself. Creed is, the more I kind of was recollecting what I thought about Creed, the more I remembered how over the top this guy is and how funny he is. He's just this he's like the really weird guy in the office. Just completely the weirdest guy you could think of, honestly. Saying the most out-of-pocket, most random stuff you could possibly think of. I don't know why. I like, a lot of the time you have no idea what he's talking about. Totally out of context. Take things literally, but in the funniest way possible. I think that Creed is funny in that way, and it brings a good chaotic energy, if you will. He's just so out left field from every other character. And I think it's so unique in that way. And I think he brings a lot more than some other characters that have a lot more screen time than him, honestly. When he's on the screen, it's just like you're thinking, like, what is Creed going to say next? So just for that, I'm going to be putting him up at the A tier. Next up, we have Jan Levinson Gould, played by Melora Hardin. Now, Jan is an interesting character in the sense that she sort of has her ups and downs throughout the series. It's kind of interesting seeing her relationship with Michael. I think that the two of them had this sort of unhinged energy going on later on, which I found pretty funny. And I think she does a very good job at sort of being that boss, but like she's not very nice either. And she goes through all these different phases as well. Like she gets pregnant later on, and it's just, I don't know. She's okay though. I think that she has some funny moments, and she does a good job at playing that boss character as well, and her dynamic with Michael Scott is pretty good, and I could definitely relate to sort of some of that as well, you know, throughout my experience working I've seen that sort of dynamic before, and I think that she kind of does a good job at showing that off in a sort of funny way, but also in a sort of corporate way, in the same way that that David Wallace does. So Jan, I'm going to be putting her at the B, and this is just very low, B-. Alright, next we have Andy Bernard, played by Ed Helms. I am not a fan of Andy. I think he's extremely cheesy, extremely annoying. I know some people might find him funny. I don't think he's funny at all. I think he's just annoying and obnoxious. He sings. He's a nice guy, though. I will say this, Andy Bernard is a character. Heart of gold. The man means well. He's nice. He's not mean to anybody. At least he doesn't try to be. And he can be a bit of a pushover at times, but again, he means well. So at least his heart's in the right place. I'll give him that. But just really annoying. Always making comments that, like, trying so hard to be funny a lot of time, and I'm not a fan of that. I don't think it's funny when someone's trying that hard, and it just comes across cringy. I found myself more cringing than laughing or being entertained by this character whenever he appeared, and then from all the way to the end, I didn't like him. Even his face, just punchable face. Yeah, I don't know. Andy goes at the D tier. I almost put him at the F tier, but at least he's somewhat of a nice character. Next we have Todd Flenderson, played by Paul Lieberstein, which, fun fact, him and BJ Novak both wrote on the show as well. So he plays the most boring character, and that's how he's supposed to be. And Michael Scott absolutely hates him for really no reason. It's not really established. He's HR, maybe that's why, but just the most monotone, boring guy in the office, but makes for some funny moments, makes for some really awkward moments, because he's kind of like the punching bag at times, and he's just, like, he's trying to keep order in this crazy office, and he's just, like, the most, like, quiet-spoken guy there as well, which is funny. That's, like, a really funny concept as well, like, this guy that's almost very passive, and then you have these people doing obscene things in the office throughout it. So having that sort of duality is funny, but I mean, there's not really much to this character. Doesn't show up too much. Is really there to be the punching bag of Michael Scott, which makes him for some really funny moments. But yeah, he's okay. I don't know if I can justify putting him at the B tier, but I will definitely say that he's C+. So he's right there bordering on a B. And finally, as the final person, we have Deangelo Vickers, played by Will Ferrell. This is sort of a guest role, a quick little transition from Michael Scott. So he's kind of getting in there to become the new boss for a little bit, and he's doing what Will Ferrell does. Being completely out there, being completely ridiculous over the top, but funny at the same time. And there's some really funny moments that he brings into the show, doing what Will Ferrell does. I think that he can be pretty cringy as well, but also given the right material, I think Will Ferrell does have some great comedic timing and great comedic chops to him, and he just brings it to this role as sort of like Michael Scott V2, like a sort of different version of him. But I think he brings a good charisma, a good energy, just really over the top. He's not there for very long, but it's a pretty good like replacement for a short while of Michael Scott. I think he's pretty funny. He doesn't play a huge role though as the show as a whole. So because of that, I think I'm just going to be putting him at a solid B+ tier. And then we had this last guy, I think Pete was his name. I'll just rate him real fast. I forgot who played him. I remember him being an intern of some kind. He's okay, a bit of a punching bag character from what I imagine. Not much going on with him as well, but kind of likable. I mean, I think he was kind of a chill guy, you know, kind of like that cool guy you kind of get along with the office. Maybe you don't talk to him that much or something. Don't hate him. Don't think he's great either. So just, I don't know, somewhere in between. I'll put him at the C tier. Well, there you have it, my tier list of all the Office characters, ranked from best to worst. Please let me know below. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'm sure a lot of people are going to be disagreeing with this list, but please tell me below. Thank you very much for watching, and please make sure to subscribe for more tier lists just like this. I'll catch you on the next one.